You are offered a choice: $1 million in cash today, or a single copper penny that doubles in value every day for 30 days. On day 15, you have $163. On day 28, over $1 million. By day 30, it exceeds $5 million. This thought experiment is a staple of financial literacy, yet a logical understanding of this curve rarely translates into the ability to sustain it in practice. Mathematics operates in a vacuum of logic, while human behavior is governed by biological machinery optimized for immediate survival. This creates a friction point. The mechanics of exponential growth are easy to calculate, but they remain difficult for the default human brain to endure. Achieving a significant divergence in life outcomes over a 10-year period requires mapping behavioral economics, not just financial mathematics. Success requires out-engineering our biological resistance to the long view. We can scale this down to a daily improvement rate of 1.01. A 1% input is defined by specific low-friction behaviors: reading 10 pages of a book, 15 minutes of Zone 2 cardio, making one choice for the future. These micro-inputs operate below the brain's cognitive friction threshold, avoiding the stress responses triggered by massive behavioral changes. When maintained for 365 days, this rate produces a 37.78-fold improvement in the target skill or asset. This 37-fold transformation is the result of mundane daily inputs that feel insignificant in the present moment. This chart plots a 1.01 daily improvement rate across a single year. It establishes the baseline for long-term compounding. The first third of this timeline is the failure zone. We call this the invisible phase. In this shaded zone, early compound growth is asymptotic to zero. On a graph, the line appears static. This creates psychological friction. You are providing the daily inputs, but the visible output remains unchanged. Because the brain prioritizes immediate feedback, it often interprets this lack of visible progress as evidence of failure. The primary filter for high-level success is surviving the grueling period where your consistent effort yields absolutely no visible validation. Our evolutionary wiring prioritizes short-term survival over abstract future gains. Psychologist Daniel Kahneman identified this as present bias. The brain overvalues immediate comfort, applying a steep discount to rewards that exist only in the future. Richard Thaler demonstrated that humans default to the path of least resistance unless a specific nudge or system intervenes. Psychiatrist George Ainsley quantified this impulse as hyperbolic discounting. We tend to choose a small reward today over a significantly larger reward a decade from now. The value of the future prize drops steeply as the wait time increases. When we overlay Ainsley's curve onto our growth chart, we see the point of failure. The widening gap between our desire for reward and our actual progress creates intense cognitive dissonance. The moment compounding requires the highest consistency is also the moment the brain signals the strongest urge to quit. A predictable biological override, triggered by the absence of short-term rewards, often forces the brain to abandon the system. Walter Mischel's research at Stanford proved that the ability to resist immediate impulses is a statistically rare trait in humans. His data shows that most subjects struggle to delay gratification, even when the future reward is significantly larger. This impatience supports the flawed belief that success requires intense, unsustainable bursts of effort. Relying on intensity is mathematically inferior because it rapidly depletes the psychological resources needed to sustain the curve. This chart plots the mathematics of negative compounding, a daily decay rate of 0.99. Negative compounding is fueled by these micro-concessions: skipping a single workout, an hour of doom scrolling, or small daily dietary compromises. Because a daily delta of negative 1% feels harmless, these habits often bypass our threat detection systems. This systemic decay remains silent for years until the curve reaches a critical breaking point. Time magnifies whatever you feed it. In a state of negative input, the invisible phase merely hides the accumulation of decay. Since visible results are poor short-term motivators, we must engineer a behavioral bypass. Rule 1 of the compound system: consistency is more effective than intensity. A 15-minute daily input builds deep neural pathways, whereas occasional 3-hour sprints often lead to burnout. Rule 2. Track inputs and ignore outputs. Focus on the execution of the daily system, rather than measuring the distance to the goal. Removing the expectation of immediate results neutralizes the effects of hyperbolic discounting. Rule 3 involves identity alignment. Carol Dweck's research shows identity drives behavior more effectively than desire. This shift moves you from the goal of writing a book to the identity of being a person who writes 100 words a day. Progress will be invisible tomorrow and mostly invisible next month. However, over 10 years, the mathematical divergence between the 1.01 and 0.99 curves becomes irreversible. Look at your daily systemic inputs. Which mathematical curve are your next 10 years tracking?